Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Hunter from OuttenAstroPrints. Join me tonight as we're going to be doing a full review on the SvBony 80mm Sv503 Doublet Refractor. Now, I have been using a lot of refractors throughout my time of doing astrophotography and even just visual observing. It's always nice to see some budget refractors on the market that won't break the bank, because to get a decent size refractor, especially for aperture wise, the prices really go up fairly quickly. And for this one here, it's actually in a really nice budget area for a lot of people and consumers. And that's been the main thing with SvBony, is trying to make, visual and astrophotography more affordable on a budget, so you're not, making your significant other very angry when one just happens to pop up on your doorstep there. That's happened many times for me, but I'm really excited to test out this refractor because it is in a really nice range of a lot of people to kind of get that mid-ground between, super wide field astrophotography or doing some nice close-up kind of stuff when you're doing like galaxies and nebulas, planetary nebulas and star clusters and so on. Now, I will like to make a disclaimer that SvBony did send me this refractor to do a full-on test and review, and I don't get to keep this refractor after this test. This has actually been part of a pretty long, kind of trade-off with this individual telescope here for many other creators out there too. So it's in my hands right now. It's going to be sent over to the next one, but we're going to be having some really nice skies here tonight to be able to do some very nice testing for this refractor. Now, I want to give you the macros for this telescope here. This is an 80mm diameter telescope, which is a really great size for people who happen to be starting off in the astrophotography journey. This is a doublet refractor, which means up here at the top of the objective lens, there is two individual lenses here that will kind of correct a lot of that, chromatic aberration, like those purples, like, hues that you would see around like really bright objects like the moon and some really bright stars. With this being the APO, that means it is corrected pretty well. That will be in the first testings for tonight. I'm going to take it to some bright stars like Vega for one, that's up in the night sky right now, and maybe take some peeks with the moon too, since the moon tonight is roughly at about 70% for this test. This is an F7 series here, which is kind of like that mid-ground between not being, too long of a focal length or, not something too fast. So this package here puts about roughly a focal length of 560 millimeters native to that F7, but we are going to be using a reducer and field flattener with this too, so that's going to speed things up a little bit down to about f5.6, and that is a really good range, and that's what I've been used to a lot of times when I was imaging with other refractors with that reducer, which gets it down to about 5.6, and the focal length for this now would be around 448. Great mid-range area for looking at some larger nebulae, some clusters of galaxies, and even tonight, a little special treat from the outer portions of the solar system, a comet. Now, also with this telescope, it comes with a dual speed focuser, rack and pinion style, but with my testing of this telescope in itself, I can't really move it right now because I am using a automatic focuser for this setup, but I can tell you now, this was one of the smoothest focusers that I have played with that's stock on a telescope. In fact, it's better than all my other telescopes that I have for rack and pinion wise. So definitely the focuser for this is super nice, and I'm really excited that it's this smooth. There's no, like, I can't even really tell there's any backlash with it, which is going to be, you know, in further testing when I use the autofocuser tonight. But if you're looking for something that has a really nice, smooth focuser, this SV503 series is very nice when it comes to it. So for this test this evening, I'm going to give you the rundown of what equipment I'm going to be running with this setup here. First off, I'm going to be tracking everything with the Skywatcher GTI Star Adventurer, which I'm really pushing the limits of the weight here, as a matter of fact, especially with the camera of choice that I'm using. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it will be able to handle it. As far as the camera choices, I'm going to be using my one-shot color camera, which is the ZWO ASI 2600 MC Pro. And inside of the filter wheel here, I'm going to be using 2 narrowband filters. Since the moon is out tonight, we're going to be going after a very large emission nebula inside of Cassiopeia. And I'm going to be using the Optilong L Ultimate, which is a 3nm HA03 filter. And I'm going to be using the Ascar D2 filter, which is an S203 filter, so we can get that typical Hubble palette view for the Heart Nebula. Heart Nebula is a great choice for this time of year. Controlling everything, since I'm using my one-shot color camera, we'll be using the ASI Air Plus. And for guiding, I'm going to be using the SvBony 30mm guide scope with the ASI 120mm for the guide camera of choice. And like I mentioned, I am going to be using an automatic focuser with this system here, just because it just makes my life so much easier. For this complete package here, not only that we're going to be going for a emission nebula tonight, there's also going to be another rare treat. And that rare treat tonight, there is a very bright comet in the morning hours. So we're going to be also doing some comet photography at the same time too, with this setup, which should give us a nice field of view, since the tail for a Comet C2025 A6 Lemon is a brilliant display right now, and it's only going to get better here over the next couple of weeks once it starts entering the evening sky as it passes by our planet. So that is going to be the job we're going to be going after for tonight. Mission Nebula, testing out how well everything is corrected with the noted 55mm back focus, typical for many field flatteners out there. On the emission nebula, how that handles, you know, everything is well corrected. The stars will be looking great. See how the chromatic aberration is being from a doublet refractor. See how size of the stars are. Make sure everything's all nice and crisp and clear. And we're gonna hopefully have a wonderful image to bring out too. So we're gonna wait for nightfall, get everything set up, and then we're gonna go on a computer and see our results. All right, so we're on the computer here, and I actually got a couple of nights to do some exposure testing with the SvBony Sv503 80mm doublet scope, putting it through some broadband, some narrowband, and even imaged a comet during this whole week time period where I had about 7 straight nights of clear skies. So we're going to look at, you know, some of the images here in the raw format after they are fully stacked. I haven't done anything like processing wise to them to what I end up having the final result. So we're going to first start off with the broadband aspect. I just did a simple cluster. I did the Caroline Rose cluster, which is in the constellation of Cassiopeia. So this is the, you know, raw output file here. Now, I expected this when it comes to doublet refractors, since there's only 2 objective lenses that are both ED glass, but it doesn't fully, you know, correct the colors, and it gives a little bit of some star bloat, and that's exactly what I was expecting with the doublet. So we have the cluster right here. I mean, it looks fairly nice. The smaller stars don't really look like it has a problem at all, but when you start looking at these brighter stars, you notice that purple fringe. That's very common with, you know, doublet refractors. There's not much you can really do, but you can tame them down to an extent, so you can't fully correct them, but if you know how to process them out, you do get some pretty decent results. But at the same time, I want to also focus on, how flat of a field do we have here? And if we're looking at the corners, this is using with an APS-C sensor. And looking at the corners, I mean, there is a tiny bit of some elongation off to the side. Could also have been some of my tracking, since the mount that I was using, I was actually over the weight capacity. So this is on the top left side. I mean, it's not too terribly bad. If you have, something like Blur Exterminator, it will fix those issues. Heading over towards the right side, a little bit better. Small comet shaped over towards that side. Heading down towards the bottom right, comet shaped out of there. It could also be just a small little tiny back focus problem too. Could be a multitude of different things, but in general, I don't see anything that is like absolutely like significant like skewing of the stars, because if you use something like Blur Exterminator here, do the correct all, like the correct only, you just put in through a deconvolution, and once you run this on your stars, you will notice it will become like perfectly circular for the most part. So as far as the testing aspects for broadband, it is about what I expected, but after doing some processing of further on down the line, I actually ended up with a pretty decent image after about like 1 hour of exposure time, and these are just 60-second exposures too. And plus I was dealing with the super bright full moon, so it was kind of hard to get some guide stars to show up because the moon was just completely washing out the sky. So it was very hard to actually do anything like broadband testing because of the moon during this time period. But for the narrowband aspect, we actually got some really good results. So here we go, after I let that Blur Exterminator do its thing, and as you can see, but like the before and then the after corrects the problem, no issues at all, and even tones down the overall brightness of the purple fringing around the stars. So after I had all the processing done, this is what I ended up with the rose cluster. I brought the stars down a little bit, shrank them, and we were able to kind of tame the purple fringing quite a bit. Now, some of the bigger, brighter stars, there's not much you can really do with this. But for a budget refractor that is basically under $350, I mean, you can't go wrong for something like this. Comparable to other doublet refractors that are twice the price, you're still going to get the same exact results from it. So that is a test for broadband-wise, but what about in the narrowband aspect? Well, I was able to get 14 hours of narrowband data using a one-shot color camera and 2 different filters. This is my L Ultimate filter, and you can see with the Heart Nebula, we fit the entire field of view for this. And when we're looking at our stars, you can definitely see where narrowband with a doublet doesn't really have any issues with the stars, because with the tighter bandpass filters, you're not allowing for those blues and like something similar to you would see from like light pollution. It actually shrinks the stars down pretty good. And then when we look at the corners are actually much better in the narrowband too. That's the top right. This is the bottom right. Stars look pretty darn good. Over towards the bottom left side, this could also be some tilt problems I might have with my camera itself because of how it's positioned. And then on this side here, but as far as the structure and stars in the center, they are perfectly round. So the great detail for this one with the hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3, and this is sulfur 2 and oxygen 3. We actually got some decent oxygen, surprisingly, with that bright moon there in the center. So when I extracted all of the individual band passes, this is the hydrogen alpha aspect, and everything is super sharp. I haven't done anything besides, extract the red channel out of my data, and the detail on this is very, very nice, surprisingly. It's got some sharp detail for a doublet, I gotta say. Sulfur 2 wise, you can really pick up on the structures side of things, especially throughout the core of the heart itself and around the outskirts. And then with the oxygen side, we can see the nice blue structure that we're going to get. So combining all of those together in the final process, this is what I ended up with. And I gotta say, out of all of the pictures I've done of the heart in the past, this actually is my favorite I've done. I got some really extraordinary good detail with a one-shot color camera. You can really see the dark nebula structures like pretty crisp clean. So this is at a full 100% view, and everything is nice and sharp. Got some good contrasts. Stars look great. You can see the center of the heart there with a cluster of stars and that nice structure. Down at the bottom, we got some great hydrogen and sulfur structure through there. We got a great look of the Fishhead Nebula with the dark nebula structure overall. So definitely you can get away with doing some really fantastic narrowband imaging with a doublet. Would have to worry about, you know, trying to tame the star bloat with it, because in the narrowband filters, it really cuts down on the sizes. So definitely, if you're looking for something in a budget aspect for doing more of like some wider field of view narrowband imaging, this is perfect. This is exactly what you would need to get the job done, because with the reducer at 448 millimeters of focal length, this fills up the entire Heart Nebula and so many other, you know, larger emission nebulas out there, especially if you're using a APS-C sensor or a crop sensor DSLR. Another narrowband project that I did was the California Nebula. Now this one is strictly with just my L Ultimate filter, hydrogen alpha, oxygen 3, but we do have a bit of a halo, but that is not because of the scope itself, that is because of the filter. My L Ultimate filter, especially with the green side, with the 03, especially being a 3nm bandpass, I do get some halos with some of the more brighter stars. We also have this weird spike here on some of the brighter stars there, but we can also, you know, post-process that out. Stars look pretty darn good, as I expected, with a doublet refractor with narrowband. We got some great structure throughout this region here, and this was taken with a 95% moon over 2 nights. Got about 12 hours of exposure time, and then after the final edit of everything, this is what I came up with. Very, very happy with this setup. You can see the nice dark structures here of the nebulosity outside of the hydrogen aspect, and we got some really detailed structure going on with the California Nebula, and the stars themselves actually brought in some color, and they look pretty good. So very, very impressed. We did tame down that little star spike a little bit too, and a bit of that halo, but we actually still got some color stars out there that actually look perfectly normal. So very, very good. Very impressed with this budget refractor, to say the least. Then we go over to the Comet. Now, I'm not going to be showing like the individual substack of this, because with Comets you do have to bring in some extra processing skills to do that, especially to get the Comet aligned itself, because it will streak throughout your image. But this is the image of Comet C2025 A6 Lemon, and this was during also the time I had dense fog shooting through, and we got some great results. We actually got some really good structured detail in with the tail as it's streaking through the constellation of Ursa Major during this time. And we were able to tame down some of the stars too. They have some great color to them, have a little bit of some softness, but not too terribly bad. The background looks nice and symmetrical in itself. The corners look real good. All in all, very impressed with this budget refractor, especially for this price range. It is definitely one of the more cheaper priced doublet refractors that are like that. It's an APO on the market, and it's definitely something that I would recommend, especially for, you know, a beginner getting ready to get into the hobby and making that next step up to do some wide field astrophotography, or if you want something that is directly for narrowband imaging for your setup, doublet refractors do perfectly fine
without breaking the bank.
So there we have it. So what are my final thoughts in regards to the SvBony Sv503, the 80mm doublet version? Well, it's a great telescope, I definitely have to say, especially for the price point that you get this from. Being it's a doublet refractor, of course, we're going to have a little bit of that purple fringing around some of those brighter stars, but if you're imaging in narrowband, actually does extremely well. You don't even have to worry about that, but you can process out a lot of those, purple fringing things if you know what you're doing. I'll have a tutorial on that here on the channel soon of how to, kind of handle that, but that's very common for any kind of doublet refractor. Once you start getting into the triplets and quadruplets, that's when things correct a little bit better. But for this price point here, especially on sale right now on the SvBony Amazon site, you can get this telescope in your arsenal right now for $359.99 USD from $449 like it normally is. So there is a sale on it at this time, but all in all, I'm really impressed with this system here, and it's a great budget refractor for anyone that kind of needs to fill that gap between ultra wide and a little bit of some focal length. Something like this does wonders. I'll have links on where you can buy the SvBony Sv503 80mm telescope down in the description below. I'll have also some other affiliate links for some of the other gear that I use for testing this telescope. And once again, thank you SvBony for giving me, the ability to test this rig out for everyone here. Very, very happy with it. Definitely highly recommend if you're looking for something to kind of fill that gap at a nice budget. And as always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Love doing reviews like this. Again, thank you SvBony for letting me do this. And as always, clear skies. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.